If you've ever taken a hike or simple walk through nature, you've probably noticed that there are some beautiful stones that can be found lying around the natural environment. It wouldn't be unusual for a child or even a curious adult to pick up these stones for further investigation. However, that may not always be a good idea. That's because some of these stones can be deadly or may pose serious health risks if you're not careful. Today, we'll be taking a look at 10 stones that should never be touched. This list will not only include stones that are supposedly cursed, but also rocks that may have a much more reasonable explanation regarding why they should never be picked up. Before we dive into it, make sure you hit that like button and ring the notification bell for more videos. Also, if you want to see something really wild, stay tuned for number 3. Tobernite. Tobernite can seem like a truly beautiful stone. It shines a brilliant green and looks very similar to emerald if you catch it in the right lighting. It's also extremely valuable, as finding Tobernite in the wild is very rare. However, this rock, or rather mineral, is highly toxic to humans and should not be touched under any circumstance. That's because Tobernite contains a high amount of radioactive material that can lead to several potentially deadly health effects in humans. According to experts, Tobernite is often made up of around 50% uranium. If you didn't already know, uranium is super toxic as it's highly radioactive. Because of this, it must be kept in a radiation-proof container and be handled with special protective clothing in order to lessen the risk of health side effects. While this jewel is extremely beautiful, it should never be used in jewelry or in any other situation that would place it within close proximity of living things. Because of this, if you see a shiny green rock in the wild, it's probably best to leave it alone. However, if you have a friend who has access to radiation protective gear, you may call in a few experts to extract the jewel, as it could fetch a pretty penny if you sold it to the right buyer. Cursed stone. This topic doesn't just revolve around one particular stone. Instead, it covers a variety of stones that would have been used many centuries ago to carry out misdeeds on fellow humans. Cursed stones will lead us down the rabbit hole of myths and legends. These stones were cursed by people many years ago, back during the time of witchcraft and other paranormal experiences. These stones would have curses placed on them. Then they could be used as weapons against other humans, causing all sorts of chaos in their lives. Sometimes they may cause health problems, other times they may cause misfortune, though sometimes they could even lead to death if they were used in the proper setting. During rituals, these stones would be turned either clockwise or counterclockwise. If they were turned clockwise, they would have mild effects on the person they were being used against. However, if they were turned counterclockwise, it's been said that the victim's life would completely fall apart. One of these stones was placed in the English city of Carlisle back in the year 2000. The stone was placed there as a work of art. However, it's been said that after the stone was placed, it led to all sorts of negative effects on the residents of the city. They say that it caused an outbreak of foot and mouth disease, terrible floods, and even a rise in unemployment rates. Chalcanthite. A mineral known as chalcanthite may sound completely foreign, but this mineral is actually much more common than you think. When you consider its professional term, copper sulfate, it probably sounds much more familiar. This mineral is often recognized by its beautiful color patterns, often appearing as shockingly vivid shades of blue. According to geologists, these blue colors will intensify as the mineral becomes more weathered. Chunks of this mineral can be found relatively easily in today's world. However, you may want to think twice before keeping them in your personal collection. According to medical experts, copper sulfate is suspected of causing cancer in some people. We don't know for sure if this is caused simply by touching the mineral or if it would need to be consumed. However, we know that it has led to an obvious increase in cancer cases in more recent years. However, many years ago, using copper sulfate in the medical field wasn't too uncommon. In fact, it would be given to patients as an emetic, and it worked quite well. Though these days, there are much safer options. In the end, if you see this mineral at a local store or in the wild, it's probably best not to mess with it unless you really know what you're doing. Coloradoite. This mineral has a very interesting name, but Coloradoite should never, ever be touched. This stone is estimated to have a mercury content of around 60%. If you're not aware of the dangers of mercury, it can cause permanent brain damage and may even cause your nervous system to shut down, leading to partial paralysis or complete loss of control of your body's functions. Mercury is a strong neurotoxin that should never come into contact with humans. That's because it's a very unique liquid metal that can evaporate at room temperatures. This may sound incredible, and it is, but it's this evaporation point that leads to so many health risks. If the vapor from mercury is breathed in, it can cause the brain damage we mentioned a moment ago. Because of this, you should never step close to a mercury deposit or even walk through the same room. However, if the mercury content wasn't enough to keep you away from this rock, you should probably know that the other 40% of this stone is mostly made up of tellurium, another poisonous chemical that's highly explosive. It's bizarre that rock like this would exist in the natural world at all. However, it's even stranger when you consider that in the 1800s, doctors used to prescribe liquid mercury to their patients, believing that it had profound medical benefits. Auripigment. This strange mineral was used many years ago as a replacement for gold. That's because at first glance, auripigment looks shockingly similar to gold. However, it's a much different mineral and should never be touched in modern times. Special safety measures must be taken before handling this object. Otherwise, you could expose yourself to toxic chemicals that can make you very sick and possibly even claim your life. This mineral contains high levels of arsenic, a toxic chemical that's often used to poison pests such as rats. Once you come into contact with arsenic, you'll be exposed to serious cramps that can cause vomiting and even internal bleeding. In the worst scenario, it could even lead to organ failure. I'm sure you've heard that during the Middle Ages, arsenic was used to poison humans as well. If there was someone that needed to be taken out for the betterment of the community, an elusive criminal may slip a small amount of arsenic into someone's drink. Before long, the unsuspecting victim would poison themselves and ultimately pass away in a very violent way. Thankfully, this is very uncommon these days. However, if you're ever in contact with this mineral, you'll definitely want to be wearing the proper safety attire. Hutchinsonite. This stone, known as Hutchinsonite, is another type of mineral that contains high levels of arsenic. We won't go over arsenic again for the sake of time. However, this mineral also contains high levels of thallium and lead as well, both of which are poisonous to humans. This strange mineral was first discovered back in 1903. Since then, it's been studied immensely, and scientists now have a better understanding of how toxic it can be. Lead poisoning is a serious risk for humans. It's become such a problem that in the United States, if you purchase a home that was built before the 1970s, you have to sign a disclosure that the house could have been built using lead-based paint. This paint was prone to flaking and could cause disastrous health risks if you were to breathe its dust. Lead can cause your organs, such as your kidneys or liver, to gradually shut down. It can also cause intestinal issues and may even lead to anemia if you're exposed long enough. Back in the 19th century, lead poisoning was a big issue because people would often unknowingly sweeten their wine with lead-contaminated sugar. At the time, no one knew just how deadly the mineral was. Asbestos. This stone may seem very obvious these days, as we're always hearing about the negative side effects of asbestos. However, throughout the early 1900s, asbestos was used in nearly everything. Asbestos was used as a popular building material in the 1900s and is present in many older buildings today. This mineral was loved by builders because it was extremely strong, held up well during the weather and wear and tear of a building, and was also a great insulator. In fact, some houses used to be built with asbestos shingles on the outside. It wouldn't be until 1970 when asbestos was found to be highly cancerous, leading to tens of thousands of deaths each year. However, still today, after all this time has passed, asbestos is believed to be responsible for at least 100,000 people losing their lives each year. This is because there was a huge population boom in the 1960s. This led to countless houses being built around this time, and many of these homes were built using asbestos. Thankfully, most of the asbestos has been removed from many modern homes. However, there are countless homes all around the world that still contain asbestos within the walls. This means if you're ever carrying out a construction project, you may still be exposed to the toxic chemical, even though it's been outlawed in America since 1979. PYURA chilensis. This is certainly one of the strangest things we've ever covered. If you ever want to find a rock that's classified as a PYURA chilensis, you probably don't want to get too close. From the outside, this looks like a bizarre rock. However, if you were to break it open, you'd learn that this rock is filled with small living organisms. These living organisms search for a place to breed when they're very young. Once they find it, they latch on permanently and begin to digest their own brain. After doing so, they'll begin to develop reproductive organs so that they can multiply. These small creatures are extremely slippery and, in general, are just downright creepy. They don't pose too much of a risk to humans. However, their bodies do contain high levels of certain chemicals that, if exposed for long periods of time, can cause health concerns. For example, the blood of these tiny creatures contains high levels of iron, iodine, and vanadium. Thankfully, these strange rocks are only found in remote areas of Chile and are not really seen elsewhere in the world. So if you're ever visiting Chile, or if you live there, try not to touch these strange creatures unless it's unavoidable. Arsenopyrite. This rock has been dubbed poison gravel. These stones are known to contain high levels of arsenic. Since we covered arsenic a short while ago, I won't bore you with the details all over again. All you need to remember is that this chemical is highly toxic and should never be touched or allowed to enter your body. However, it's not only the arsenic content that can kill you. The parts of this stone that are not composed of arsenic are made up of iron and sulfur. While iron is relatively safe, sulfur can cause health concerns for many people. Also, if these stones are ever heated up by an open flame, they'll begin to smoke and release toxic chemicals that can lead to certain death for anyone nearby. Because of this, you probably don't want to mess with arsenopyrite. As the name suggests, this mineral is deadly. Galena. At first glance, this rock doesn't look too deadly. In fact, Galena is a very pretty stone to look at, though you don't want to touch it if you don't have to, and you certainly don't want to break it apart. The dust particles that can come off of this stone are highly toxic if they enter your airways. Galena also contains large amounts of lead, so for this reason you probably want to leave Galena alone. However, in the interest of full disclosure, this stone is perfectly safe so long as it remains in one piece. It is beautiful to look at, leading many people to display it in a glass case so that the dust particles cannot get out if the stone is damaged in some way. Thanks for watching. You now probably know a lot more about natural stones and minerals than you did before tuning in. To keep the message of this video brief, it's probably best to not touch pretty rocks you find in the wild unless you really know what you're doing. If you find a rock that you'd like to take home, you should probably call a professional or a geologist before touching it, as it could lead to some serious health issues. But before you go, be sure to hit that like button and ring the notification bell for more great videos.